All right, guys, it's Friday night, and we're going to hit you up with the DraftKings Week 1 College Fantasy Football Saturday early slate. We're going to break down all the games quickly, just go through the Vegas projections, the matchups, talk about the slate because it's much different than FanDuel and how you want to approach it as different games. And it's pretty interesting strategy that you need to play. And then also run down about the 20 to 25 players that I like and how to build lineups with those 20 or 25 guys. Before we get into the DraftKings Week 1 College Fantasy Football Saturday early selections, just want to give a heads up. Please make sure and hit us up at rotocurve.com and become a member. Participate in our forums. Hit us up in our chat. Follow us on Twitter at rotocurve.com, or at rotocurve, I should say, and me at Fantasy Rath. Important that you do that as we build our community, and we have a lot of free content for daily fantasy sports, a lot of learning videos, a lot of teaching videos for all the different major sports that you want to play on all the major sites. So just make sure you go over to rotocurve.com and sign up for a free account and start participating on our site. That's something that we hope you can do. Let's jump into the DraftKings Week 1, and let's hit us up with that screen share. I got my Excel spreadsheets ready to go, and I got several tabs, so let's hit it up. All right, guys. First thing we're gonna do, like we always do, we bring over all the salaries, and take a look at this. So we bring over all the salaries. Typically, we sort it, and then what I'm doing is going through, and I'm going to identify the players that I like. I got about 25 players that I like. We'll sort those by position. We got 5 quarterbacks, got about 9 running backs, and we got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 wide receivers. You see we got about 3 or 4 or 5 guys in that upper tier, 3 or 4 in the mid-range, some cheap. Running back, it's pretty much elite guys, and then mid-tier, a couple of cheap guys. And then quarterback, we're spending up on. I just don't like any of the cheap quarterbacks for this particular slate outside of Dane Evans, who I absolutely love from Tulsa. We talked about him in the FanDuel video. So some of the players are going to overlap. However, just be aware that there are a lot of games on DraftKings that are not on FanDuel, and that's a challenge because that means we have to do additional research, and we have games that don't have point spreads. So let's get into this. Let's go to DK Vegas, and we take the same information that we had from the previous spreadsheet on FanDuel, and then we add all the new games, and I've got them in orange here. Now, here's the thing. We have FBS teams, which are Division I, and then we have FCS teams, which are 1AA. FCS teams are all on this side. Now, what I've done is I've looked at Phil Steele's rankings for the FCS, and I've identified 4 very good FCS teams that are on the slate: Illinois State, Southern Illinois, Youngstown State, and Sam Houston State. Now, we don't have players from those teams, thankfully, but I'm looking at Iowa, Indiana, Pitt, and Texas Tech. Now, even though they're playing in games where there's no point spread, what that means is a lot of people are just going to bypass these games and not look at them. There is opportunity. Now, one of the resources that I use is a site called MasseyRatings.com. Massey, M-A-S-S-E-Y, ratings.com. He projects every single game and a potential score. And he's pretty good as far as, coming. He does the whole entire season, and I really, really like what they have going on there. We're just going to come over here. And as I'm talking real quick. So anyway, what happens is you've got a lot of these games with no point spread, and people don't know how to play these games. Well, the good thing about it is there's opportunity now for you to have some players that no one else is going to be on, or identify potential opportunity where it's going to be a situation where it's just not going to make sense to take any of those players from that particular game because it's going to be such a blowout and the game doesn't really mean a lot. So, when you have a team, when you have these teams like BC playing Maine, Clemson playing Wofford, Maryland playing Richmond, etc. Look, Washington State playing Portland State. Portland State's actually not a bad FCS team. However, we know about Washington State. We'll talk about them. So, I've got these scores highlighted in green. We got the FBS games in green. And then we have those special games highlighted in orange. And we got to identify some of these teams. Now, I take the scores from Massey ratings. These are his projections. So he thinks BC is going to win about 40-6 over Maine. So that would make the line 34 with a total of 46. So you see here, you got some very high spreads. However, when I highlighted the FCS teams in green, ironically, these are the teams with the highest ratings, and these are the games that look to be the most competitive. So Iowa, Illinois State, Indiana, Southern Illinois, Pitt, Youngstown State, and Texas Tech, Sam Houston State all look on paper to be more competitive than the rest of these other FBS, FCS games. So that's going to come into play in our research. Now, I come over to the matchup page. I did not change anything from the FanDuel matchups except for I took out the Old Dominion game, which is on FanDuel, not on DraftKings. I left this alone. It really doesn't make sense to throw in matchups for the FBS, FCS games because we're looking at differential and there's just there's no data out there for those FCS teams that I could legitimately trust. So what I've done is I've kind of identified the players in the matchups that I like. Now, a lot of these are going to come into play from the previous video on FanDuel, and then we added the other ones in. So at the top of the list, salary is high to low. We have Deshaun Watson from Clemson, the quarterback, who's one of the best college fantasy football quarterbacks in the country. The problem is they're going to get up 42-0 or something like that. They're going to pull him, and that's going to be an issue. So you just hope that he gets enough play to where he racks up enough. My thing with Watson is this. I think you can only really use him in a stack with the other two wide receivers for Clemson, which is Artavis Scott at 7,800 and Mike Williams at 7,500. To me, you've just got to load up on the game. You've got to go Watson with the two wide receivers. If you're going to play Watson, that would be my strategy. The number one guy on my board, it's basically a top two for me this week. Josh Dobbs, quarterback from Tennessee, against Bowling Green at home. They're a very heavy favorite, but not heavy enough to where they would pull him, I don't think. And Bowling Green does have a pretty good offense, so I think they're going to be able to keep the game within reach in terms of the spread. So that's why Dobbs is up there, and he's a dual threat guy. Luke Falk, who's a guy I talked about in the preseason, Washington State at home against Portland State. This game could get crazy. Portland State's actually not that bad of an FCS team. They're not, sisters of the poor, but this is Washington State. They're going to throw the ball a ton, and Falk is going to rack up yardage. It's going to be crazy. I mean, I'm going to want to see some of this game if I can find it on a TV somewhere. So Falk and Dobbs are really like the top two. Mahomes is a little bit of a wild card going against Sam Houston State. Here's the thing about Mahomes, the Texas Tech quarterback situation. Mahomes is going to start. We don't know if he's going to split time with a backup or not, so he is a little bit risky. Mahomes, to me, is more of a tournament play. And then Dane Evans, who I think if you factor in price, is the best value play on the board at quarterback at 6,700. Brand new offense going against FAU at home. Dane Evans should be able to put up some serious numbers in this game. So I really like Dane Evans in the spot. And I think you have to try and pair him with Kevon Lucas without a doubt, and even go with Garrett if you can get Garrett in there as well. So if you're going to play Evans, I think you can play Evans in any contest, cash or GPP. But if you're going GPP, go a little bit crazy and try to get Lucas and Garrett in there as well. You want to gobble up the entire passing attack for Tulsa. Let's look at the running back position. Definitely have some more players here. You can run multiple guys on DraftKings. You got 2 running backs and 2 flexes. So if you wanted to run 4 running backs, you can. I don't think that's necessarily what you want to do this week. I think you want to run with 3 in cash with this particular game set, mainly because there's not a ton of guys at the top. So I think you can squeeze one of these guys in. And there's some value in the middle, but there's not 3 guys, there's not 4 guys that jump out to me. I think you can run with 3. there's a lot of value at wide receiver. I mean, this is much like it was on Thursday. Just a ton of value at wide receiver. So I think that's something. Look, James Conner's at 9,800 against Youngstown State. Youngstown State could be competitive. Conner is all of Pitt's offense. Tyler Boyd has been suspended for this game. So I gotta love Conner in this spot. It's tough to fit him in at 9,800. It means that you're going to have to go with a Christian McCaffrey, with a DeAndre Washington, with a Rock Thompson. You're going to have to pair him with one of these sub 5K running backs to fit him in, and you're going to have to go cheap on wide receiver. But Conner does have the potential of like a 200-yard game, 4-touchdown type of performance. So you just have to be aware. I don't think you're going to get that from Alex Collins. I do like Alex Collins, but I don't like him nearly as much as James Conner. There's other running backs at Arkansas. Even though Jonathan Williams is out, I think that they might not necessarily go with Collins 100%, where Conner's going to get everything. So I would probably downgrade Collins a little bit. He is on my top 9, but he's not really – he's probably closer to the bottom. Paul Perkins is a guy that I like mainly because of game script. The game's at home. They're a heavy favorite. You have Virginia that has to travel all the way to the West Coast. And they're going to – and UCLA starting a freshman quarterback in Josh Rosen. I think they're going to lean very heavily on Paul Perkins in this game. I think Paul Perkins has potential of having a monster game. So you're either going to want to go Conner or Perkins in your cash. The other guy I look at in cash, I think, is 2 guys more I think you can go with. And the price is right on these guys. Jordan Howard, running back from Indiana. I talked about him as a sleeper running back in the preseason. He comes in as a JUCO transfer into a great situation. They had Tevin Coleman there last year. He got drafted to the NFL, to the Atlanta Falcons. So Howard's a stud, and I think you're going to lean on him in this game. He should get quite the workload. So, I really love if you can try to fit like Howard and Hurd. You're paying about 14.4. That's nice. That's about a little bit less than 30% of your cap. So I think in cash, you can go Howard and Hurd and be in a really good spot. Hurd, he gets that matchup against Tennessee. The price on Hurd here is incredible. I mean, he's at 6,900. He very easily could be 8,900 here. So I think that these 2 guys present tremendous value. I think these are the 2 guys that you want to look at in cash. GPP, you're going to have to go with one of the sub 5K guys, but I think these are 2 building blocks in cash that I think I really, really like. The other matchup here, we have the number 1 running back for Iowa is LaShawn Daniels. Iowa gets a good matchup against Illinois State. It's at home. Iowa does like to run the ball, so you get him. He's a GPP play for me. Ownership could be low, so that's what I'm looking at there. The 3 cheap running backs. I like 2. I'm not in love with a third. A lot of guys are all over Rock Thomas. I'm not in love with him going against Louisville. Louisville's got a very good defense. I know the Auburn running attack has been very successful in this offense, and I know that a lot of people are jumping on Rock Thompson. I still think that there could be a little bit of a timeshare situation with this, but you're getting him cheap, so he is a GPP play for me because I don't know if he's going to get 100% of the carries. Also, I don't like the matchup with the defense, so GPP play for me on Thomas. McCaffrey and Washington, to me, are definite plays for cash. McCaffrey for sure because of the matchup. You have Stanford going at Northwestern. This should be a grind-out type of game, so I like McCaffrey to get a lot of workload here. And DeAndre Washington, you got Texas Tech going against Sam Houston. He should get play. I like him more in tournaments because of the upside. You still have Mahomes there. You still have the passing attack. With Stanford, we kind of know what they're going to do on offense. Their number 1 wide receiver is a little bit banged up, so that's why I like the tight end on FanDuel a little bit more. I like Austin Hooper, but I also like McCaffrey here. The price is just incredible at 4,800, starting running back on a very good team. Stanford's defense is pretty stout. They're going to want to run the ball, and they're going to want to win with defense on the road. So that's where I like those guys. Let's hop over to wide receiver. You're going to see a common theme here. I'll hop over, 2 Clemson, 3 Washington State, Missouri, FAU, Tennessee, and so that's the guys that I like here. So let's go down the list. The number 1 guy for me is Kevon Lucas, without a doubt. He's a number 1 wide receiver for me this week at 7,800. Tulsa at home going against FAU. Definitely need to pair him with Dane Evans, absolutely, because Evans is so cheap. The other guy I think you want to try to get in the lineup if you're going to stack Tulsa, Kearis Garrett, number 2 wide receiver at 5,200. You know my theory on number 2 wide receivers. I love taking number 2 wide receivers on high-powered offenses because you get incredible value, and oftentimes they throw the ball so much that the guy just gets the windfall. So, definitely love that situation there. Let's talk about Jakeem Grant. More of a tournament play for me. You got to pair him with Mahomes. Artavis Scott and Mike Williams, we talked about when to use these guys. I think it's only in a stack with Deshaun Watson. You're going to want to not play the guessing game on who is going to get the yardage and the touchdowns. You can go crazy on Washington State. You can actually try to run a 2 or a 3 stack wide receiver with Falk. That would be the way to go. I think it's a little bit risky in this matchup. This is not Baylor SMU, where Baylor is kind of motivated to run up the score here. Washington State is going to put up points. They're going to throw the ball. My concern is, do they call off the dogs at 38-10 and kind of, just let up and put all the backups in? That would be my concern. So, kind of what I'm going to do at Washington State, I think I'm going to pass on Craycraft because of the price. He's at 7,800. I don't really like the fact that he's priced so much higher than the other guys. So I really like Gabe Marks at 6,200, and I like Dom Williams at 4,800. So if I'm going to go with Falk, I'm either going to fade all the Washington State wide receivers and just take Falk and not play the guessing game, or I'm going to go upside and I'm going to take Marks and Williams. I think that would be the direction to go. Jamon Moore, number 1 wide receiver for Missouri. Again, we have that great matchup, $4,600 for a number 1 wide receiver. More of a tournament play for me. Because a lot of times we just don't know how these games are going to turn out. This is a guy I think you can play in tournaments and cash. Jensen Stochak, number 1 wide receiver, FAU. This game should be high scoring. It should be close, back and forth. And then the other guy I like is Marquez North, who's the number 1 wide receiver this week for Tennessee. Howard is suspended. Marquez North then gets a number 1 spot. And at $4,200, he's a steal. I think you can play him in cash in tournaments. The thing about him in tournaments is I think the ownership rate could be through the roof. Could be a lot like Desmond Epps, who he recommended Thursday and went off. So I think Marquez North in a tournament could absolutely just be crazy owned. So you might want to look at him as only cash. So that's kind of my breakdown on the players that I like and why I like them. Switch back over to the Vegas. Okay, we looked at the matchups. And let's get into lineups. Let's see how some of this stuff plays out. So let's go into the first lineup that we have. And so we got Dobbs and Evans, who I feel like are really the top 2 quarterback plays, spending about 33% on our cap. We're going cheap at running back. So, again, this is more of a tournament play for me. We're going McCaffrey and Rock Thomas. McCaffrey is safe, more of a cash play, but, again, we're going cheap. Thomas is definitely the upside guy. And then we're playing upside games. We're going with Gabe Marks, Washington State. Tons of points, tons of offense. Texas Tech, I'm going to want a piece of that attack, so I'm going with the number 2 wide receiver in Devin Lauderdale. Tevin Smith, number 1 wide receiver for Iowa, 4,900. Again, we just talked about Marquez North. Very hard to pass at 4,200. And Jordan Westerkamp, who's the number 1 wide receiver for Nebraska. And you get Westerkamp because the number 1 wide receiver is out for Nebraska. He's hurt. So Westerkamp jumps in at 3,900. So you get him cheap. So the reason why this is a GPP lineup is I'm going with 5 wideouts, double flexing the wideouts. So I'm spending almost 50% of my cap on wide receivers. But you notice I'm not going with any of the major guys. I'm not going with Kevon Lucas and Jakeem Grant or any of the Clemson guys. I'm really going for some upside guys, and I'm rolling 5. I'm going super cheap at running back, and I'm going heavy at the quarterback position in terms of I'm going Dobbs and I'm going Evans, who's my number 1 guy. So to me, this is a really nice tournament lineup because you get the 5 wide receivers. Let's hop down here. Let's say you want to go Falk Evans instead of Dobbs. So if you go in Falk, we talked about the strategy going with Marks and with Williams, Washington State. So we got a Washington State stack. I'm going with my boy Evans. I'm not taking any of the Tulsa wide receivers because I'm loading up on Washington State. Again, I'm going McCaffrey and Washington cheap here at the running back position again because I'm going with 5 wide receivers. I got to get North in there because of in Westerkamp because they're so cheap, and I got to squeeze in Tevon Smith. So again, this is more like, what do I do with Falk? I'm either going to fade the wideouts or I'm going to pair two guys. I'm going to go with the best value. I'm going to go with Marks and Williams. I just think Craycraft, he might be good, but when you got the other two guys so cheap, then I think that's the direction you got to go. Let's hop down here. Let's go Falk Dobbs at quarterback. Monster. We're paying about almost 40% of our cap at quarterback position. So we'll go Falk Dobbs. We went here. We went Falk Evans. We went Dobbs Evans. So now we're going to switch it up. We're going to go Falk Dobbs. So we're not going Evans at all. We're going off Evans. Again, McCaffrey, Washington, sub 5K running backs. Throwing in Rock Thomas again. So we're going 3 running backs, 4 wideouts. Some of the same names here. This is a Tennessee stack. So if I like Dobbs and I want to stack Tennessee, I'm going to go Marquez North and Von Pearson. I'm going to take the number 1, number 2 wide receivers, and I'm going to load up with Dobbs. And then I'm going to go high upside quarterback with Falk. Again, look at all my skill position guys. Not one of them is over 5K. That's just the tremendous value on DraftKings. I'm going high upside. I want monster quarterback, possible monster quarterback points, 40, 50-point outputs. I'm hoping to get, Tennessee goes off, and I'm hoping a few of these other guys just give me some floors that can kind of settle off the risk that I'm taking. We'll come down here. We'll go with a Texas Tech. This is more cash gameplay, even though I know Mahomes is a little bit risky. But we're spending more money here at the running back position, and we're going 3 running backs. So this is more cash game to me. Going Mahomes, going Evans, but we're plugging in Howard. We're spending more money at the running back position, so we're spending about 25% at the running back spot. Howard, I love, absolutely love Howard. Got to have him in cash games for sure. Then McCaffrey, Rock Thomas, Devin Lauderdale, Tevon Smith, Marquez, and Westerkamp. These you see some of the same names. It's just the value is so incredible on these wide receivers. They're all number 1, number 2s in phenomenal matchups. But again, Jordan Howard to me is a guy that is hopefully going to be lower owned than I would expect. So I think there's some big name running backs out there that people are going to fall in love with. Perkins or Nick Chubb or something like that. Nick Chubb scares me. I'm very scared that Nick Chubb is going to get 10 carries and they're going to pull him. They don't need Nick Chubb in this game. They've got other running backs in back of Nick Chubb that are very good. So I could see Nick Chubb running like 10, 12 carries. He might get 100 yards and he might get 2 touchdowns, but I'm just worried that he gets 10 to 12 carries and they yank him. That's my biggest concern with him. We'll come down here. This is a lineup where I'm not giving you the full lineup. I'm leaving open the flex spot, which could be a $4,300 player. And this is plugging in James Conner, who could potentially be the number 1 running back. So you got Mahomes and Evans. We're going with the stud running back at 9,800, so more of a cash game play with the 3 backs, DeAndre, Washington, Rock Thomas, and then super cheap. We got the Tennessee boys in Westerkamp. And I leave open the flex just to let you guys know that, you can put in a running back or a wide receiver at 4,300 here. But this is more like what would a lineup look like with James Conner. I just wanted to just show you guys that. So again, I got about 25 guys that I like in this video that we went over, talked about every one of them, and went over the Vegas, how to handle FCS versus FBS games. I think that's a huge opportunity there. How to use Massey ratings to get the projected totals, how to use the matchups like we talked about before, and then how to apply the picks into the lineups. All right, guys, I know that's a lot to take in, but the DraftKings early Saturday slate is pretty tough, and it's a lot of research involved. So just remember, check us out at rotocurve.com. I can't stress it enough. Go to rotocurve.com, sign up for a free account, take advantage of all our tools and our content. We are not charging for any content at this point for all the daily fantasy advice. You're getting very, very solid advice, not just picks, not just spoon-fed lineups, not just projections. We're sitting down and we're talking with you about how to play daily fantasy, how to bankroll manage, how to build lineups, how to project, how to look at matchups. We're giving you every single thing that we do and we look at when we play our teams every single day. Thanks again, guys. Hope you have a great Saturday. Check us back here again for more videos on college football and NFL starting next week.